Hey guys, we are Sean and Christy. This is Long Long Honeymoon, and today we have a fantastic topic brought to you by viewer King Tan Vaughn, who says how to stay awake while driving. Not really in question format, but
not really a detailed question, but important question nonetheless.
Because every year, hundreds of people actually die due to accidents from drowsy driving and falling asleep while driving. So we have 10 critical tips to help you get safely to your destination. Number 1, get sufficient sleep before you leave on your trip.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Now,
not rocket science, but important to remember.
Well, that sounds pretty obvious, but in fact, most of us, before we embark on a major trip, are pretty excited. I know this happens to me. I'm always excited and actually have a hard time sleeping the night before.
You're worried because you're thinking about all the things you've got to remember. Did I do this? Did I pack that? So you sort of have a little bit of restless sleep.
One strategy here would be to pack ahead of time, pack in advance, and we kind of do that over the course of several days.
All right. Tip number 2 is to plan your driving schedule. Look at your map. Be realistic about how long it's going to take you to get somewhere so that you're not pressed for time, and plan accordingly. Don't try to drive 2,000 miles in a day and a half.
For those of you who are new to RV travel, you travel much more slowly in an RV than you would in a car. I mean, that's just the way it is for all of us.
And in a lot of states, it's regulated that you travel slower because the speed limits are lower for people towing a trailer.
Traveling with an RV rig is more mentally taxing than simply driving a car. And just those mental demands, whether you are towing a rig or if you're traveling around in a motorhome or a bus or something you're not accustomed to driving on a daily basis, you're going to be more tired after doing that because it's just more mentally involved. Tip number 3, take frequent breaks while you travel. We typically will stop every couple of hours or so when we're towing our RV rig. Some of this has to do with my knees because I get some knee pain, frankly, these days.
From being kind of stuck in one position.
From being stuck in one position. That's really bad and hard on your knees.
Yeah.
I do think it's good practice when you're traveling with an RV. Anytime you're on a big road trip, stop every couple hours, stretch your legs, refresh your mind a little bit. And so that's kind of what we're doing now. In addition to topping off our fuel tank, we are recharging our personal batteries.
Tip number 4 is to avoid driving during sleepy hours. And really, this is kind of like midnight to like 6 a.m., sort of like those middle of the night, wee morning hours, and then late afternoon. Those tend to be the times, I think, according to like the National Highway Safety and AAA and things like that most of these like drowsy driving accidents happen.
For me personally, that mid to late afternoon time is the worst time for us to be towing. There's something about that time of day. I just want to take a nap.
Like that 3 to 5.
That 3 to 5, and and in summertime, the sunlight can be very harsh that time of day. Sometimes it can be hot. And I just get sleepy. A lot of times I will just get sleepy even in mid to late afternoon. And yes, a lot of accidents do happen during that time of day. Tip number 5, hydrate and snack wisely. First of all, staying hydrated just through drinking water really is beneficial to your mental alertness. So don't let yourself get dehydrated. And with regard to snacks, whole food snacks are better than sugar bombs. So bananas are better than Snickers bars. I think we all know this.
If you eat like a really heavy meal, like a big pasta dish or, something that's really heavy in carbs, you tend to be sleepier after that. So that's sort of like the dinner time meal. That's not the midday meal when you're going to be getting back in your vehicle and doing some more driving.
I think that is an excellent point about not overdoing it at lunch because the siesta exists for a reason.
Exactly. It makes you want to take a nap, so be mindful of that when you're stopping to eat lunch.
Yeah. I mean, if we have a late, heavy lunch and then we get back out onto the highway and it's that mid to late afternoon time, it's over. Tip number 6 is to use caffeine strategically. Use some strategery when it comes to caffeine. This segment brought to you by Red Bull. Not really, but I do sometimes indulge in those energy drinks mid to late afternoon during that really dangerous sleepy time or drowsy time for me. You know, of course, you don't want to overdo the caffeine, and energy drinks, I'm sure, are not very healthy. Coffee would probably be a healthier choice of caffeine if you're going to have caffeine.
But I'm somebody like caffeine doesn't affect me really. Like I literally could drink a Coke and then go to bed and sleep with no problem. So I think relying on caffeine is a slippery slope.
There are some members of our audience who don't drink caffeine or consume caffeine at all.
Right, exactly.
And there are other all-natural foods and drinks that you can consume that will enhance your mental alertness other than caffeine.
Tip number 7 is to engage in mental stimulation. So what does that mean? It means listen to like a really interesting podcast, an audiobook, you know, your favorite songs that you like to sing along with, something that's, you know, kind of jazzing you up or keeping you engaged. But I will say be careful because some audiobooks to me, if the person reading has like a really monotonous voice, you know, it's like Sleep City, you know.
On the other hand, if you find some long-form content that's really interesting to you and stimulating and engaging, it makes the time just fly past.
Yes, absolutely. Especially if it's really, like we've listened to some audiobooks in the past that were like really engaging and you just wanted to know what was going to happen. And so, you know, you just kept listening and really were just focused on the story really than the time. So it's nice if you can find something like that. You could also play your favorite episode of Long, Long Honeymoon.
Obviously, you want to avoid being mentally distracted and looking at video content. However, having something like an interesting show playing in the background so you can follow just through the audio track could really keep you stimulated.
Yeah.
It can keep you awake.
It'd be sort of like listening to an old-fashioned radio show, you
Right.
know?
I mean, honestly, we do it all the time. Just
Sure.
don't let yourself be distracted by the video portion of the content. All right, normally I wouldn't say anything, but I'm going to have to insist that you stop reading your book while towing the RV rig.
I'm not towing. I'm sitting in a parking lot. I'm sitting in a parking lot for anyone watching. Don't freak out.
Tip number 8, maintain the optimal temperature and ventilation. Some people will say that if the temperature is too cold, it can have detrimental effects. We definitely know if it's too warm, it can make you drowsy and sleepy.
Too warm is my problem, personally.
So, I mean, from a ventilation standpoint, it's usually good to have some good airflow, you know, hitting you in the face. You know, roll down or crack your windows if necessary.
Right.
I think the temperature should be cool and refreshing in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, a long time ago, I was told that a lot of libraries are kept a cooler temperature because it encouraged mental stimulation.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, most libraries are pretty chilly.
I think when you're warm, you sort of get cozy and then you
Yeah.
get sleepy.
And you get drowsy.
You know, you start to nod off and it's hard to pay attention.
And this can be really dangerous in the colder portions of the country because, like, people are driving during those sleepy time hours of the day. They crank up the heat because it's cold outside, and they find themselves getting really drowsy. So don't fall into that trap.
Tip number 9 is to involve your co-driver. So we do this fairly often. I mean, Sean will, you know, his knee will hurt or he's just, you know, he's tired. He's been driving for a couple of hours and he needs a break, and so we switch up. And that's why it's important for you co-drivers to know how to drive the RV, because you never know when somebody's going to be tired, they're not going to feel well, they're going to have a headache, and you need to take over.
Yet another pit stop is underway. We're currently slogging our way across the great state of Missouri. It's really good for both members of a couple to know how to tow your RV rig. I have absolute confidence in you. You're tan, rested, and ready. Christy has a lot of experience towing our RV rig now, and she is volunteered to tow for the next hour. Just gives me a little break. Lets me relax and surf my phone, refresh, revive, renew. And then as we get closer to Kansas City, I'll probably take over because I obviously have more experience navigating through those urban areas. Well, how was your experience towing across Missouri?
It was good. The only downside was driving into the sun. That was a
Yeah,
little tough, but besides that, it was pleasant.
that late afternoon towing.
Yep.
Good job. Gave me a break, and I appreciate it. I mean, over the years, Christy has played a crucial role. And it's not like she has to do it every day or all the time, but, that late afternoon time when I'm feeling tired or sleepy, maybe she's feeling more alert.
And I'm happy to be able to do it. And it mixes the trip up for me as well. You know? Sometimes you're in the passenger seat and you sort of start to get a little bored, and you don't want to completely ignore the driver when you're in the passenger seat. I do occasionally listen to something on my phone, whatever, but I try not to do it for longer than like 30 minutes at a time, just because that means that I'm completely zoned out and it's leaving Sean totally by himself. And that's when I think the driver starts to get, sleepy, tired, whatever, when they're just...
Yeah, I have to say, it's hard if your passenger dozes off and if you just feel like you're driving alone in the cabin, and if you don't have any kind of mental stimulation like a really good podcast or football game going, then that can be the danger zone. Yeah. All right, tip number 10 is to recognize the warning signs of drowsy driving and pull over, get some rest if necessary. Yeah. And of course, for you RV travelers, you're towing a bed.
Yeah. You have the ultimate roadside stop with you. Pull over, find a nice little parking lot, a rest stop, whatever. And you don't have to stop for hours and hours and hours, but you could stop for an hour nap, 2-hour nap. We do that a lot, especially those late afternoon hours when there's a lot of traffic. We'll just find a big parking lot and stop and take a little nap.
According to AAA, more than 40% of all drivers have admitted to drowsy driving. If you find yourself going down the highway and you've got heavy eyelids, or your eyes just want to stay closed, certainly if you open your eyes and you veered over in the lane, anytime if you're driving and you experience those symptoms, you need to pull over and rest. And I think one of the great pleasures of RV travel is being able to stop whenever you need to and rest. I love that personally. And we've actually met several of you guys in rest stops around the country because we pulled over just to take a little break, and somebody will pull in next to us and say, wait a minute, is that really Long Honeymoon over there? Yes, it is.
You never knew you were going to meet us at a rest stop.
Sorry, guys. There were 10 tips to avoid drowsy driving and avoid falling asleep on the road. What about you? Do you have any additions to this list? Any ideas? I know that we have a lot of truck drivers in our audience. I would love to hear from you truck drivers, your personal strategies to stay alert and awake and safe when you're traveling down the highway. Because you truck drivers travel really long distances, and a lot of times you do have to put in long distances in short periods of time. So how do you do it? We would love to hear from you and, of course, from everyone else. Post a comment, chime in, and share your knowledge with our community.
If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It means a lot to us and the algorithm that is forever changing. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do so and click the bell icon to be notified when we post a new video. And until next time, what do we say?
Lo, lo, ho. By the way, guys, check us out on Twitter. We're starting to upload some video content directly to Twitter. So join us there. You will find a link beneath this video to our official Twitter account. See you next time. All right, I think that was good. Actually, here's a true story of probably the closest I ever came to being involved in an accident from drowsy driving. And in this story, I was actually the passenger. It was when I was in college and I was hanging out with some friends in the small town of Auburn, Alabama. And one Saturday night, someone had the great idea of driving to Montgomery, Alabama, a larger city, and hanging out with some friends that we had there. So we drove to Montgomery, went out partying with our buddies until the wee hours of the morning. We probably went to Waffle House and had a chopped steak melt plate. And then we still had to drive back to Auburn, which is about a 45-minute drive. And at this point, it was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, it was cold outside, and naturally we wanted to crank up the heat in my friend's Fiero GT. So we were driving back to Auburn, and I, in the passenger seat, nodded off. I was awakened by the sound of our vehicle running off onto the shoulder of the interstate highway, and my friend who was driving the car also had nodded off. So he was really struggling to stay awake as we made that 45-minute journey back to Auburn. Well, we battled with this back and forth, and again, we had cranked up the heat inside the vehicle, and I think that had made us really warm and cozy, and we were both nodding off. This is the crazy part of the story. At one point, we both woke up, and we had driven straight past the Auburn exit on the highway. So in other words, we were both asleep as we passed the Auburn exit. And needless to say, that is shocking and terrifying. I'm not proud of it. We immediately turned around and went back to Auburn, but we were kind of young, naive college kids and probably did not realize the risk that we were taking. You've got to learn the warning signs when you're in that kind of situation and really try to just never to be in that situation to begin with.